Hello, welcome back. Today we're going to be looking at usability, the secret sauce for easy to use websites. So first things first, let's talk about the problem. This part of the course is very relevant for any website and it's also relevant in the offline world as well. And because my background is both web design and user experience, I would say that usability tends to be a little bit more on the whole from the user experience or UX realm. But it's so crucial to get it right, and the implications of getting it wrong are so extreme that this course would not be anywhere near as good as it could be if we left out usability. It's a crucial aspect. It relates to terms that you probably hear all the time, such as easy to use, clear, uncluttered, straightforward, all those sorts of things in a way are in the arena of usability. So let's talk a little bit more about usability. So first of all, let's talk about the problem and the story of digital. Now, my perspective on this is that ever since websites, applications, those sorts of things have really become super important, have gone mainstream to us all, the speed and the pace at which they've been produced is obviously accelerated. And historically, perhaps, it was really mainly about getting a developer and someone who can perhaps look at the sort of aesthetic side of the design, get those guys together and produce a solution. And that's not bad, that gets things done, but there is a problem, and that is usability. Because us humans, we're not necessarily entirely evolved to use websites and applications. And so when it comes to getting human beings clicking on, interfacing, zooming, scrolling, swiping, all those kinds of things, and interpreting digital screens or, on your desktop, your phone, your tablet, that sort of thing, and then interacting to get things done, it's not a natural situation, basically. And therefore, when websites and applications were sort of produced very quickly, as they had to be done to meet demand, it soon started to become clear that there was a problem with usability. So what might have been fantastic from a technical perspective and look great might, when it comes to someone actually trying to use it, i.e., the sort of things we need to do, like find something online or register for an event or any number of things, basically doing a search even on Google. It became clear that if care is not taken, usability issues creep into the solution, which causes our potential customers or users of our websites and applications to sometimes get stuck. And so usability is a way to sort of zoom in on that and evaluate websites to make sure that those sort of things that cause problems are resolved and they are corrected so that the usability is very good, so customers do not get stuck or confused, etc. Because the consequences of customers or prospective customers getting stuck and confused is, of course, business lost. We've all been there. You're in a hurry, you just want to book something, you select it and you go to pay, and something goes wrong with the payment process. There's too many form fields, there's a field there you don't have the information for. So this is what people call shopping cart abandonment, and it's a big problem in the e-commerce world, where the usability of the shopping cart flow was poor enough to cause a lot of potential customers to just abandon it and go elsewhere. So there's many more things such as shopping carts, though. The usability issue is across the board, and it's really important that when we're creating websites, we really have a focused think and a look at usability. It's not at all a complicated thing, but one thing I would ask you to do, if you think back to a time where you've been trying to do something online, as we probably all have, you're in a hurry, you're under time pressure therefore, and you just can't seem to find what you're looking for, you just can't seem to get something done, the link that you want just isn't there, the FAQs item that would really sort you out is just not present. the label on the button is confusing. You can't find the button. You can't find the navigation at the top is confusing. The search functionality that you've used on a given site comes back with results which are way off the mark. All these sort of typical things that we all go through are usability issues. And the problem is, us as users, we tend to sort of blame ourselves. Oh my gosh, I'm just not on my game today. Why can't I figure out how to find item X? Or why can't I get this credit card payment to go through? You know, why are there no navigation labels what I need? These are the sorts of things where we blame ourselves, and we feel a little bit irritated with ourselves. We get very frustrated, and we may well not go back to that website ever again. And the thing is that it really wasn't probably our fault. Of course, occasionally it might be, we might be having a bad day, but on the whole, these sorts of issues and glitches which stop us getting things done online are because that the people who designed it, you know, have really not thought long and hard enough about usability. So it's really, really important, and it's a little bit of a hidden art, because if you don't know the problem is there, which we've now discussed the problem, so you all do know that there's a problem. You do know also now that the issues you've been facing yourself when using websites have not usually been your fault. It's been the fault of the designers and the developers to not sort out the usability. So now you know that, let's talk about some typical examples. Because as this is a web design course, you may find a lot of web design courses don't touch on this at all, and that's a bit of a mistake, a bit of a shame, but the truth is a lot of web designers haven't necessarily got the background to look at usability. Because I'm a UX guy as well, I've sat in multiple usability test analysis. I've run usability moderations where we watch customers use our products and we figure out where they're getting confused and we correct them. So yeah, I'm basically here to make sure that you guys get this right. Now, as I was going on to say there, is that as this is a web design course, not a UX design, and of course if you decide you're getting interested in this field, then you can go and have a look on my website, uxshowhow.com, and you'll see some UX-based courses which will go into this sort of stuff in more detail. But because this is a web design course, I'm not going to go in super deep. I'm just giving you the core essentials that you need to know. And now we're going to look at some examples of typical problems in usability that people may face. And we'll look at solutions. So confusing navigation is quite a common one. Sometimes it's the labeling is confusing. It just doesn't describe where things are going. Sometimes just way too many navigation options there, so it's very hard to pick out what you're looking for. Sometimes it's a question of you kind of mouse over the item that you want and it expands out, a great big fly out menu. You then go to mouse over an item in the list below in the menu that's expanded, and everything disappears, so it's collapsed again. That's a common issue, which is a huge problem and a classic usability issue. So navigation's opening and closing and you can't quite get to what you want. I'm sure a lot of you have been there. Those are the typical things. And then simple user journey steps as well, where you navigate using the navigation, you go somewhere where you need to go and then you can't see a way back. That's another problem that sometimes occurs, perhaps more and more larger complicated sites. But this is confusing navigation, and of course if your customers cannot navigate your site, need I say more that this is a big risk in terms of you selling or promoting to them, or if you're not selling things, if they can't navigate the site, it's the same problem. They can't find what they need to read or learn or do. So basically if the navigation is off through, can be happening, and usually if it does happen it's through usability issues, then your website has a big problem in terms of becoming successful. So what do we do to address this? So navigation, I think just a few points. The key things you need to think about here are keep it as simple as you can, and this word simple will come up a lot. Keep it clear, okay. Keep it descriptive. This is talking about the words you use, not too long, otherwise you run out of space on the screen, but keep it descriptive. So sometimes it's really worth spending some time on your navigation labels. So let's talk about the next one. Let's talk about confusing interactions, where on a web page you're scrolling down and things start popping out okay, where you didn't necessarily expect that. And the trouble is, what I often find working on many web projects is there is sometimes an appetite when producing websites and applications to come up with fairly snazzy, fancy, interesting things, such as things that fly out, things that move across the screen, things that do perhaps slightly unexpected things, but in the name of trying to be sort of cutting edge and super creative. Now that's all well and good, nothing wrong with cutting edge and super creative, but where there is something wrong is when those things confuse your customers, and where those sort of things flying out are happening where they really don't need to, where 9 times out of 10 when I see those problems, the simple solution is stop the animation, stop the pop-up behavior, stop the thing flying out. Just keep it simple and stay straight on the page, because that's what our users want. They want a simple user experience. As we've touched on already, our users on our websites are often in a hurry. They just want to see what they need to see, learn what they need to learn, and ideally buy what they need to buy. So that's why I would say that all these sort of fancy fly out animations and effects, on the whole, be wary of them. I know there's going to be occasions where they're really effective, but I would say not sure how often that's going to be the case. So bear that in mind and keep things simple. So confusing interactions. So basically avoid, or I would say, I'm actually going to go that far and say avoid, or at least reduce the number of them. At the very least. Again, when you have someone who's recommended it to you, or you've seen a feature that you're interested, think to yourself, forget flashiness. My users don't want flashiness. They just want to get the job done. Can I do without this flashy interaction? And the answer is usually going to be yes. Poor labeling. Well, we've touched on that already for the navigation. But it's really important that you think that through on your links throughout the page, on your buttons throughout the page. I know we've touched that on that when we talked about buttons on another lesson. So labeling is, when you think about a user journey, imagine a customer comes to your site, they find out, let's just say for example you sell something, or you want them to download something, they come to your site, they use the navigation first and foremost to find where to go, and the labeling there needs to be really good. When they get to the right page, they need the subtitles to be labeled in a nice descriptive manner. And when they find what they need to buy or do, they need that call to action, that instruction from you, from your website that says, buy now, or click here to download report, or download report's probably actually better to have that as the link text. All along the way, you want the labeling to be descriptive. And when they click on a navigation element that says about me, you really want the page that loads up once they've clicked on there to say about me at the top. So this uniformity, this consistency of labeling throughout your site and clarity of labeling is really important. So when they click something, ideally you want them to go somewhere where there's a confirmation to them that they're in the right place. They've gone to where they expected to go, and that's done through just effective, consistent labeling throughout. So to solution, I would say again, consistency, clarity, relevance. All right, so now let's talk about poorly designed forms. Or a lot of sites, they have some form or another. The more information you need to capture from customers, the more risky this element becomes. And what I'm saying here is that when we're in a hurry and we want to buy something, people like me who design shopping cart flows and to try and optimize them to make them frictionless, as easy as possible, because we know every tiny piece of friction in that process of a customer trying to buy something online, every single piece impacts your sales. It's always a negative effect. So people like myself from the UX side, a classic will be that we'll go in when we're designing these kind of pages, and we will look at what's being proposed for a checkout sequence, and we'll always say, what of those form fields can we get rid of? I know the business want to record lots of information about the customer, understand the importance and power of that, but bear in mind that poorly designed forms, because they've got too many form fields, are a really big issue for conversion, for making sales, for getting customers to complete the task on your website or application. So that's the first thing, is the number of form fields. The other thing is, again, the labeling of the fields need to be good. And the button labeling goes without saying, needs to be very, very clear and obvious. And just do what you can to make that form look as unintimidating, as simple and straightforward as you possibly can. And that can be done, there's visual design techniques which can be used. Touch on the main ones is really just have a uniform design, a very simple flow, everything left aligned, or potentially two form fields max, first name, last name in a row, and then down to the next, and trying to keep it to sort of 2 or 3 rows in total. Just subtle extraction really of heavy labeling, heavily design aspects all around it. It's really about simplification. And interestingly, a lot of usability is all about simplifying things. So what I would say for poorly designed forms is minimal number of form fields, or let's just say fields, and simplistic design, really. Simplistic, uncluttered design. So once again, with forms, it's all about the page loads, the form is there, or it's you don't want the customers to sort of go, oh gosh, you don't want that feeling. It needs to be none of us like filling in form fields, let's be honest about that, but what you want is, it's just a couple of fields, and I clearly see what you need from me, and you've made it clear what I'll get if I fill that in. This is kind of the sort of conversation that you need to have via your labeling and messaging on the site. So just a few things to bear in mind there. Lack of clarity. Now that you're probably recognizing a theme here: clarity, simplicity. A lot of people use the term a clean design. These are the sorts of things that are really important in web design pages. And this one is including that, but I'm also thinking here about the clarity of the website, the clarity of the individual pages. Sometimes you'll go to web pages and there'll be just lots and lots and lots of stuff. It's not totally clear what you're actually expected to do, or what the options are. There's no real clear hierarchy, there's no guidance. So a homepage, for example, we would want that to be very clear in terms of, you as the owner working with your designer, unless you're designing it yourself, really think hard about what needs to go on that page. Not going into too many options, really, just a focus message and focus things that you want the customer to do. And then when they come to a page further down in the hierarchy of your website, again, you want real clarity about what that page is for via the title, what's possible on the page, and just make it possible for the customer to get what they need in terms of extracting the information in order to make a decision to move to the next step, ideally, if assuming that's what your site is about, if it's about conversions. So a real focus on what they need, simple and clear messaging to get them there, and all the other stuff out the way. Sometimes don't have it on the page at all if it's really not important or necessary, but if it's secondary information, make sure it's visually clear that these other items are secondary and are not sort of mixed in with the core information and buttons and links that you want the customer to interact with. So I would say lack of clarity. So again, it comes back to clear intent from that's really from the designer's perspective. Clear steps for user to take. And lastly, just say remove or deprioritize. I'll just keep it simple. I'll just say deprioritize. Prioritize non-essential content. Okay, I think that covers it. So these are some key points. I think if you address all of those on your site and just and think about the sort of solutions that address them, your site will be in a much better place than a lot of others who are not even aware of usability. A lot of people sort of know that there is a thing called ease of use or things like that, but as it's a specific focus, almost a science you could say, and if you're on top of it, just these core elements, you're going to find that your website is way more easy to use for your customers, and you'll get much more better results from them on that basis.